Welcome to my YouTube channel FaisalPotter. Today our topic is Anglo Saxon or Old English period. The earliest phase of English literature started with Anglo Saxon literature of the Angles and Saxons, the ancestors of the English race. Much before they occupied Britain, English was the common name and tongue of these tribes. Before they occupied Britain, they lived along the coast of Sweden and Denmark, and the land which they occupied was called England. These tribes were fearless, adventurous, and brave, and during the last year of Roman occupation of Britain, they kept the British coast in terror. Like other nations, they sang at their feasts about battles, gods, and their ancestral heroes, and some of their chiefs were also bards. It was in these songs of religion, wars, and agriculture that English poetry began in the ancient England, while Britain was still a Roman province. Though much of this Anglo Saxon poetry is lost, there are still some fragments left. The most important poem of this period is Beowulf. It is a tale of adventures of Beowulf, the hero who is a champion and slayer of monsters. The incidents in it are such as may be found in hundreds of other stories, but what makes it really interesting and different from later romances is that it is full of all sorts of references and allusions to great events, to the fortunes of kings and nations. There is thus an historical background. After the Anglo-Saxon embraced Christianity, the poets took up religious themes as the subject matter of their poetry. In fact, a major portion of Anglo-Saxon poetry is religious. The two important religious poets of this Anglo-Saxon period were caedman and cynewulf. Caedman sang in series the whole story of the fate of man, from the creation and the fall to the redemption and the last judgment, and within this large framework, the scripture history. Cynewulf's most important poem is the Crist, a metrical narrative of leading events of Christ's ministry upon earth, including his return to judgment, which is treated with much grandeur. Anglo-Saxon poetry is markedly different from the poetry of the next period, Middle English or Anglo-Norman period, where it deals with the traditions of an older world and expresses another temperament and way of living. It breathes the influence of the wind and storm. It is the poetry of stern and passionate people concerned with the primal things of life, moody, melancholy, and fierce, yet with great capacity for endurance and fidelity. The Anglo-Saxon period was also marked by the beginning of English prose, through the chronicles which probably began in King Alfred's time, and through Alfred's translation from the Latin, a common available prose was established which had all sorts of possibilities in it. In fact, unlike poetry, there was no break in prose of Anglo-Saxon period and the Middle English period, and even the later prose in England was continuation of Anglo-Saxon prose. The tendency of the Anglo-Saxon prose is towards observance of the rules of ordinary speech. That is why, though one has to make a considerable effort in order to read verse of the Anglo-Saxons, it is comparatively easy to understand their prose. The great success of Anglo-Saxon prose is in religious instructions, and the two great pioneers of English prose were Alfred the Great, the glorious king of Wessex, who translated a number of Latin chronicles in English, and Aelfric, a priest who wrote sermons in a sort of poetic prose. The Angles and Saxons first landed in England in the middle of the 5th century, and by 670 AD they had occupied almost the whole of country. Unlike the Romans, who came as conquerors, these tribes settled in England and made her their permanent home. They became therefore the ancestors of the English race. The Anglo-Saxon kings of whom Alfred a Great was the most prominent, ruled in 1066 when Harold, the last of Saxon kings, was defeated at the Battle of Hastings by William the Conqueror of Normandy, France. The Anglo-Saxon or Old English period in English literature therefore extends roughly from 670 AD to 1100 AD. The Angles and Saxons combined in themselves opposing traits of character, savagery and sentiment, rough living and deep feeling, splendid courage and deep melancholy resulting from thinking about the unanswered problem of death. Thus, they live a rich external as well as internal life, and it is especially the latter which is the basis of their rich literature. To these brave and fearless fighters, love of undernourished glory and happy domestic life and virtues made great appeal. These followed in their life five great principles: love of personal freedom, responsiveness to nature, religion, love for womanhood, and a struggle for glory. All these principles are reflected in their literature. They were full of emotions and aspirations and love, music, and songs. The Anglo Saxon language is only a branch of the great Aryan or Indo European family of languages. It has the same root words for father and mother, for God and man, for common needs and the common relations of life, as we find in Sanskrit, Iranian, Greek, and Latin, and it is this old, vigorous Anglo Saxon language which forms the basis of modern English. Thank you so much.